everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tall and Short with Tim and Tony.
I hate this.
He's Tony.
That's Tim.
There it is. And I'm a little too excited, aren't I?
The only reason you're ever this excited is because you get to do one of your obligated serial killer episodes.
And
you get to gross me out and make me squirm.
Squirm. Yep, episode 25, Tony, which, as you have already said, a new serial killer for you. And I said there would be blood, my dude. Sure enough. But it's a general thing with serial killers, arguably. But what if I also said that there was some dark folklore that was included with this one?
Are we going back to the Appalachians?
Nope.
Oh, thank God.
Nope, we're not going to Appalachia. Where I will say this. This one, I continue my streak of difficulty finding records. Like, proper records.
You're so good at this.
I know, right?
Why do you make yourself hurt like this?
Because I want to try to find the right thing.
That's fair.
But anyway, I have a bit of a brief teaser for who it is. And I think when I say the first thing, you're going to realize it. It's said she had over 600 innocent girls killed and that she bathed in their blood.
Oh, shit.
Today we're talking about the Blood Countess herself, Elizabeth Bathory.
You are royally screwing this up.
Nice. Props. That's right. And even further, I do have a few things about that. I have a few things to go over first. We're going to discuss the Bathory name, because I wanted to look into it. I want context, because there's a lot that was happening during her time. The environment that she grew up in, the political climate, which was also religious.
Ugh, gross.
As well as the life of this supposedly brutal woman and the atrocities that said that she committed. Top of the show, before I get into this, I will say listener discretion is advised for mentions of gore, torture, sexual assault, and mentions of rape.
Well, you had me at blood.
Yeah. Sit back down. Come on. Before we get into it, I do have a few sources as well. The first one, and this was my primary source, Infamous Lady, The True Story of Countess Elizabeth Bathory, 2nd edition, by Kimberly Craft. This is one of the most in-depth sources I found that talk about her life. But of course it came out in like 2007, so a lot has changed since then.
Yeah. A little bit. Couple things.
The second major source I used was Elizabeth Bathory, The Blood Countess documentary by The People Profiles on YouTube. It was about an hour long, and they actually did a lot of in-depth details about, like, again, the political side of things and details that made me go, I kind of want to learn more about this. And then finally, I went to Reddit, because Reddit actually has a lot of good stuff.
Yes.
And I found the subreddit Ask Historians, a comment thread by the user named Orange Wombat, who discussed in depth Elizabeth Bathory and also provided their sources at the end of the post.
Nice.
Like and they also used a couple of they used Infamous Lady's
sources
big time. I'm like, wow. So it was very beneficial. So I got quite a lot here, but it was still a bit of a trip into trying to find the right sources, if I'll be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go over first a brief history on the name of Bathory. And we're going to get a little bit of Games of Thronesy here.
Oh boy.
It's going to get something. I'm throwing that off as well.
Side note real quick.
Shoot.
Just before you get down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Have you tried to read the House of Blood and Fire, the prequel book?
No.
Oh my God, the Targaryen name in that book, because it's pre
Yeah.
It's the landing of... It's the history of the Targaryen name when they land in Westeros.
Yeah.
They have like 5 names,
Yes.
and they just use those 5 names.
Yep.
For like 500 years.
Yeah, no. It's like you got Aegon, Aemon, and just all these others.
They don't use the second or the third. They just go, Aegon, this guy.
Yep.
I thought he died like 100 years. What happened?
Yeah.
No. If your shit is like that, I'm gonna punch you in the face.
There are a few of them, but I'm going by last name basis. I'm being very smart about this.
And then Aegon shook hands with Aegon, and then shook Aemon's hand.
I'm not gonna pull that nonsense because there's a lot of Janoshes and Annas and a bunch of others in here. So I'm also using the actual like Hungarian pronunciations.
Just give me like one Fred.
Funny you mention that. Anyway, so the name of Bathory is an old one, dating back to the founding of the family in the late 13th century A.D., with the family being one part of a noble collective called the Gut Keled. There's a whole history on that one, and I just went, it's not necessarily fully what I'm looking for here.
Yeah.
The name stems from Batur, which is the area that Elizabeth Bathory would be born in. It literally means of Batur. Bathory is of Batur.
Of cookie batter.
B-A-T-O-R. And now I think it's now called Near Batur. So,
Bless you.
very simple. There is also a second origin to the name, as well as a legend to the coat of arms of the Bathory family.
Oh, damn.
Yep. The legend states that the Bathorys actually started in 900 AD, not in the late 13th century AD. A fierce, God-fearing warrior named Vitus sought out a nearby dragon that had been ravaging the countryside near the castle of Eshed. The warrior found the dragon in a swamp, stabbed it 3 times with a lance, and his reward was the castle of Eshed, where the Bathory family would rule from. The Hungarian word Bator translates to brave, so they do that. They decided to have this little mythology just to make it sound more grandiose, which, yeah, I don't blame them. Makes it sound more convincing than just, some guys from southern Germany came over and we just joined their group.
Yeah. A little more fantastical, a little more...
Yeah, this also helped with the family getting a crest in 1325. The crest being 3 sharp teeth horizontally placed, be it either wolf teeth or dragon teeth.
Yeah.
And it would eventually be surrounded by a dragon that was biting its own tail.
Interesting.
The addition of the dragon didn't happen until the early to mid 1400s, though. And the reason why I say this is because this very same dragon happened to be the very emblem of the Order of the Dragon, which had several other noble Hungarian families and Transylvanian families in. This is the very same Order of the Dragon that Vlad II Dracul belonged to, being the father of the infamous Vlad the Impaler.
Yep.
In fact, there is the crest right now. I'm sending it to you.
Okay. Side note, real quick.
Whenever it...
Do you know what your family crest looks like?
It's a golden hedgehog.
What?
I'm not kidding. It's a golden hedgehog on a blue background. Not even kidding.
Oh, shit.
I'll let you have your laugh. But that is what the crest looks like.
That's allegedly what mine is.
Allegedly. Okay.
Yeah. I've seen very similar,
it's like a chevron type of thing there.
Yeah, and the variations I've seen are very close, but it's a knight's helm on top of a red and white banner with 2 flowers and then drapery behind it. But anyway.
Yeah, hedgehog.
Gotta go fast.
Anyway. There were 2 major branches of the Bathory family. The Bathorys of Shomyo and the Bathories of Esched. I actually have because these are Hungarian names and they are not spelled how they look.
There's going to be some butchering.
Yeah,
so I pissed off the French. You're going to piss off the Belgian. Or the Hungarian.
Hungarians. God damn, Tony. Now,
Blue pen.
Yeah, no, I actually... The video that talked about Elizabeth Bathory that I mentioned at the top of the show, pronunciation guide was very helpful.
Good. You're still going to piss off some Hungarians, though.
Possibly. The two branches stemmed from the sons and grandsons of the founder of the Bathory family, Briccius. The older branch is the Somio family, while the Esched branch is the younger. In fact, I think Near Bator is where the Esched branch stems from, and it means new Bathory, essentially. I bring this up because her father was from the Esched branch, while her mother was from the Somio branch. Some good old cousin fucking. Hit the banjo! Now, again, not something uncommon at the time, but also, still, look at the Habsburgs. And speaking of, we're going to bring them up later.
Let's talk about the Targaryens. Wait.
Further, the Bathory family was a very connected and influential family. Notable members include Stefan Bathory, who was King of Poland from 1576 to 1586, another uncle, Andrew Bathory, who reigned as Prince of Transylvania from 1589 to 1599. She also had several other cousins and relatives who were chief justices, princes of Transylvania, and, various other nobilities. Voivodes of Transylvania, which is just prince.
Yeah.
The Bathories were also one of the more wealthy families, so they would usually lend money to families with more influence, much like the Habsburgs.
Yep.
Kind of like the Lannisters lending money to the Baratheons. Just to help with the understanding of this.
Help with the translation.
Yes. The political climate that Elizabeth grew up in. She lived from 1560 to 1614. Spoiler, she dies.
My God.
But I want you to think about those dates for a second. 1560 to 1614. Just think about this for a minute. There was a lot of conflict, both internal and external forces that were going on in medieval Hungary. For one, there was the Protestant Reformation that had started in 1517 when Martin Luther posted his 95 Theses on a church door. Hungary had two forms of Protestantism, Lutheranism and Calvinism, as well as some Catholicism.
No Hobbesism?
No Hobbesism. After a massive power struggle and division of Hungary, and Hungary was split into three different areas.
It was medieval Europe.
Oh, basically. Big time. I'll get into this in a minute. There were many princes of Transylvania, and they were very religiously tolerant. Funny enough, most of the nobility, they were Calvinists, including the Bathory family, with the exception of her uncle Stefan, who was Roman Catholic. This religious tolerance was accomplished by the Edict of Torda, which, in the short of it, essentially recognized the legal status of Lutheranism, Calvinism, then called Reformists, I believe, and Roman Catholics, and even anti-Trinitarians, thus, the Unitarianism, which has been around much longer than I thought. I thought it was a more modern one. It's actually been around fairly for a while.
Couple years.
Yeah.
Couple years.
So, for the time, this is pretty progressive, considering how most Protestant and Catholic tensions in medieval Europe have been.
Yeah.
External forces also included the Holy Roman Empire under the rule of the House of Habsburg from the west, as well as the invading Ottoman Turks from the east.
Yeah.
There was a power struggle for the throne of Hungary after 1490, when the king of that time died. I'm not putting names up because it's like brief instance here, moving on. Weak successors were selected by groups of nobles, which meant, puppet kingships. Puppet leaderships, nothing major. This allowed Suleiman the Magnificent to take control of part of Hungary. And it wasn't until 1526 that the political struggle would affect both branches of the Bathory family. The Shomio Bathories, they supported János Záporya, Voivode of Transylvania, while the Eschid Bathories supported Archduke Ferdinand I, who would go on to be the Holy Roman Emperor in 1556. Elizabeth's father, George, decided to break support with the Habsburgs and instead support János Záporya. He did this by marrying Anna Bathory, now bringing the two branches of the Bathory family united. The Habsburgs would not forget this betrayal. In fact, Georgi Bathory, he would actually lose the castle that was his because of that. They were not happy with that.
No, I imagine not.
János Záporya became king of Hungary, but when he died in 1540, Hungary was divided into three territories: Habsburg Royal Hungary in the west, Ottoman Hungary in the central and southern parts, and then the Principality of Transylvania in the east. And it would be in Transylvania where Elizabeth would be born. Now, we're going to talk about her life. The life of Elizabeth Bathory. Bathory Elizabeth, or Elizabeth Bathory in the English translation.
In the English.
Was born on August 7th, 1560 AD to her parents, Baron George VI Bathory and Anna Bathory. She was one of several children, and I couldn't find much other than she had at least 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Again, records are pretty scarce about this, which I hate. There was already hearsay about the Bathorys being sexual sadists and inbred lunatics. Claims of her older brother Istvan being a sadistic sex fiend and a drunk, running around the marketplace naked. An uncle...
Sir, that was Tuesday, and I was off that day.
You incriminating yourself now?
Anyway, what about now?
An uncle by the name of Gabor, who dressed in armor and fought off ghosts and demons while speaking in tongues.
So you...
I don't know what you're talking about. And then an Aunt Clara, who was bisexual, who was a bisexual witch who killed her husbands and trained Elizabeth on how to torture.
Your wife.
Oh, I'm a little concerned now.
How much of that is wrong, though?
No. I'll say this: the thing is, these are claims by peasants, servants, not nobility.
So a slightly skewed view.
First thing right there, because there's some problems with this one. Istvan, which is Hungarian for Stephen, but I'm going Istvan for the sake of argument.
That just sounds way cooler than... Hey, Steve.
No, Istvan.
Istvan.
Yeah.
Oh shit, someone's serious.
But there's a...
Steve. No.
But their problems are here with these claims is that Istvan may have been a sex fiend and a drunkard, but he was only about 5 years older than Elizabeth and would not have had much impact on her life. Like, there were claims that she was sexually abused by her brother, and it's like, no, not likely. Not likely. They were probably close growing up together, being 5 years apart.
Oh.
Also, she didn't have an uncle named Gabor. She had a cousin of that same name.
Well, I mean, it's the royalty.
Yeah.
Your cousin could be your uncle at that point.
And Clara may have just outlived her husbands because they too were from prominent families. Thus, political ties were key to marriages most of the time, especially in nobility. So it's like her first husband may have died, and then it's just like, well, I got to get married to another guy. I'm gonna get married to this dude. Who's probably my third cousin. I'm gonna
get married to this rich asshole who might be related.
Who's probably my third cousin twice removed. It's okay.
It's fine. It's whatever.
Not to mention that Aunt Clara probably didn't have enough time to tutor her niece, being more focused on doing a lot of her, duties around her estates.
Yeah.
Granted, what some thought of the family as being weird could have just been aristocratic eccentricities. I mean, if you have the money to be weird, you can be weird.
Proof in statement.
This includes, temper tantrums, swordplay in the house, and even having a particularly favorite chair. I knew I'd get you.
Fuck off. Shit.
As a child, Elizabeth was prone to seizures and epilepsy. I mean, when your parents are cousins...
Yeah.
duh. Seizures were, at the time, seen as evidence of demonic possession.
Oh my
so
God.
that's where it was... There's that fun fact, too. Her father also dealt with seizures, so, could have also been genetic.
Yeah. Sounds like
it's
it
definitely
was
genetic, all right.
I mean, keep it in the family, guys.
Once again, look at the Habsburgs. Yeah. As a child of a noble house, she was given a very excellent education, especially for a girl. I mean, my God. A woman learning? The absurdity.
Oh my God. You're just digging yourself a hole.
Oh, I'm digging myself 6 feet under, man. I already been there and back. She would learn Hungarian, Greek, Latin, German, and Slavic.
Damn.
Oh yeah, she was very well... She could read and write in those languages and speak them, so...
Well, damn.
Yep. She was also trained in the classics, so, classic literature, mathematics. Some accounts say astronomy, botany, biology, and anatomy, but some say that she didn't know botany or that sort of thing, that she was not into herbs, which,
I mean, if you're into herbs...
funny enough, I'll get to something later. She was also interested in religion and, by extension, the occult.
There it is.
Which, again, that sounds about right. It makes me think of, like, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the book.
Mm-hmm.
Claude Frollo, he's the archdeacon, but he's also allegedly an alchemist, which is a cult back then.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me, because when you're learning about what could potentially be on the other side, you want to go, what else is there? And you sort of look
start
into
asking questions.
Interestingly enough, Elizabeth would be what we call a tomboy nowadays. Because not only did she want to be treated as equally as her male relatives, she also liked dressing up as a boy, getting a boy's education, and practicing fencing and horsemanship at home. She did also...
Can you blame a kid?
I mean, I can't blame her. She did also enjoy dressing up like a young lady, wearing fine jewelry, playing with animals, and engaging in philosophical discussions.
Nice.
One of the most commonly told stories about Elizabeth Bathory's childhood was when she witnessed a Romani man get sewn into a horse with his head sticking out of the dead beast, while Elizabeth giggled at the horrific sight.
Okay.
I had to use the word Romani because some sources, they use the slur gypsy.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to use that word. I only use it just for the context of why I'm going Romani.
Yep.
So that is, I think, the only safe bet, I would argue.
Yeah.
Anyway, there were problems with this story, though, is the fact that horses were seen as more valuable than peasants. Or Romani. Especially, definitely more than Romani, because back then the Romani people were very persecuted.
Yeah.
So, killing a horse for a punishment would not make sense unless the horse was already dead or on its last hoof.
Which could have been.
Mm-hmm. And also, it could have been very, what is called contrapasso, the punishment fits the crime situation. Because Hungarians, they had a very unique sense of punishment for crimes. So say the Romani man had stolen a horse, this would be some cruel irony.
Yeah. And not that I'm approving of it, but...
This type of law and punishment that that the Hungarian nobles would hold, this would go on well until at least the mid-19th century. So for a couple hundred years. So while the rest of Europe was going through the Enlightenment, Hungary was still very much was still dealing with a lot of medieval law.
I've always been a fan of crime fitting the punishment, or
Punishment fitting the crime. Yeah.
I'm not endorsing someone being sewed into a dead horse, but if he stole a horse,
it's a cruel irony.
Yeah. Someone in the torturing department was like, "Guys, I got a brilliant idea."
And this was in law for nearly 300 years.
Yeah.
So it was common. In fact, now, had Elizabeth Bathory witnessed brutal executions? Oh, absolutely. There's no doubts.
Yeah.
Servants and peasants were dealt with rather harshly, leading to hangings, beatings, or even getting hands cut off for various crimes.
Oh, adorable.
Oh, yeah, so like if you're a thief, goodbye hand. A good example of a very interesting, brutal execution I found was this happened just before Elizabeth was born. A good example is that there was a leader of a peasant revolution.
He's dead.
The revolution got snuffed and he was roasted alive.
Fun times.
Yep. 1571. Elizabeth Bathory, age 11, was announced in an arranged marriage engagement to 16-year-old Ferenc Nadezhde, son of Thomas and Orsolia Nadezhde.
And namaste to you, too.
The engagement would last for roughly 4 years. And there's a reason why. We'll get into it. In 1572, Elizabeth would leave her family's estate in Esched and move into the Nadezhde estate in Sarvar, which is also in Hungary.
That's right next to Narnia.
Pretty much. Yeah, there's Narnia in the north and Sarvar in the south. Here, at the castle of Sarvar, she would learn on how to be a wife and what she would be expected to do around the castle while her future husband went about his business or war. Get a lay of the land, understand the people.
Go get a lay.
Etc., yeah. Get an A-lay for the Erderlay. Aderlay? I can...
Ladle. Fuck was that even an attempt at?
Good question. Pig Latin. I was trying to do Pig Latin. Am scray,
Pork that up.
Pretty much. This was very much a business deal for the two noble houses. And
it always is.
They always are, especially back then. Sarvar was a different entity for Elizabeth compared to her family's home in Esched, because in Esched, she got her way most of the time. Mm-hmm. Probably because she was also still a child. I mean, she was 11 when the engagement was announced. But in Sarvar, she was being groomed to be a wife, which may have been difficult at times.
I would imagine, yeah.
Her soon-to-be husband was also off to school often, so Elizabeth had considerable free time. Not to mention, she would also be left unsupervised.
Great.
Mm-hmm. This has led to a story that, in 1573, at the age of 13, she was involved in an affair with another young man. Whether he was a young noble or a servant has been up for debate. Elizabeth had become pregnant from this affair and had given birth to a daughter who was immediately taken away and raised elsewhere. The Bathory family did everything to cover up this scandal, hush moneys, threats, etc. Allegedly, Elizabeth appeared before the priests and lodged a formal complaint against the young nobleman, saying she was abducted, drugged, and raped.
Oh.
It is also said that Ferenc, her soon-to-be husband, heard about this, ordered the young man to be castrated, and then his severed member was tossed to the dogs.
That is some Game of Thrones shit.
Some say the young man was then tossed to the dogs as well.
Ow.
But validity for this story has been up for debate for a while, mostly due to the fact that this evidence, I'm using air quotes here, It came up centuries after Elizabeth's death. A pseudo-historian had actually done this whole thing about it, and he said, oh, it was 1609. It's like, if it were 1609, she would be 40s, dude. So, she would be 49. She wouldn't be 13, so... Yeah. So right there already, it's showing that there's some caution about who and what Elizabeth Bathory is. In 1575... Elizabeth Bathory and Ferenc Nádasdy married. Both of Elizabeth's parents would not attend. Her father died in 1570, and her mother probably just a few years after her dad. Records for her mother were also fairly scarce, which is unfortunate. I couldn't find birth or death dates. Ferenc's parents also did not attend, for they both were dead as well. The Nádasdy parents had Ferenc later in life, with his father dying when he was only 7, and his mother dying in the spring of 1571, around the time of the engagement. So quite literally, the last thing Ferenc's mother did was try to secure something for her son, and the Bathorys were selected because Elizabeth Bathory was intelligent, the family name was incredibly strong, and also Elizabeth was, going off of their terms back then, she was very beautiful. Yeah. Funny enough, both mother-in-laws, Orsolya Nádasdy and Anna Bathory, they were related through marriage with another family.
There it goes.
So, married in-laws. Some allege that Elizabeth would learn cruelty tactics from her soon-to-be mother-in-law, and that the two despised each other. But the timeline doesn't match up, and it's uncertain how familiar Elizabeth was with Orsolya. She may have, in fact, I'm pretty sure Orsolya died before Elizabeth even made it to the Castle Sarvar. The wedding was definitely opulent, with over 4,500 guests. Obviously, there was feasting, as well as jousts and tournaments.
There is no way on this earth I would go to a wedding that large.
I would never. I wouldn't even know how to do a wedding like that.
No. No.
One particular wedding gift that Elizabeth would receive was the Castle Cheta. And Castle Cheta will play a major key point later on. Elizabeth retained her last name, given that it was an older, more prestigious name than Nádasdy, which is definitely a little different from the time. Some sources even say that Ferenc Nádasdy took her last name, but I'm like, it's only like one or two sources that said that. Everything else said, no, he still kept Nádasdy. Inheriting both of their parents' respective properties, Elizabeth and Ferenc would amass quite the fortune, with thousands of acres, several towns and villages, and over 20 castles to their name.
Jesus Christ.
They had money.
Yeah.
In 1578, the Ottoman Turks began raiding the Hungarian countryside once again.
Those Turks.
Those Turks. Ferenc Nádasdy amassed a large army to combat the raids. Ultimately, he would receive the nickname the Black Knight of Hungary.
Alright, that's kind of badass.
Oh, yeah. He was...
That's kind of cool. I dig it.
During his time in war, Ferenc was known for his bravery in battle, but also his cruelty towards Ottoman prisoners of war. Torturing them, defiling their corpses, and even playing catch and kickball with decapitated heads.
To quote Metalocalypse, that's fucking brutal.
Such treatments were fairly commonplace, especially against non-Christian combatants at the time, so that's not something that's unheard of.
Not justifying it, but in the
But it's not outside the realm on this one.
No.
While Ferenc was away at war, Elizabeth would focus her time on running the vast estates, managing staff, writing and dictating letters, etc. Also, her writing style was described as curt and to the point. She didn't do flowery, "Oh, my love, I doth miss you," like the great mists of the morning.
Get your ass back to work.
Pretty much, that's what she said. That's pretty much how her stuff was. She was very straightforward, did not mess around. She may have also visited her Aunt Clara, who I mentioned earlier was thought to be a bisexual witch, who would teach her niece witchcraft, torture, and how to make love to women. This is, again, mostly hearsay and suggestion, though. Many women back then that practiced folk art and herbal medicine
were automatically witches.
Yeah, both noble and peasant women, but mostly peasant women, because, they don't have money.
True.
Where am I wrong?
Yeah.
There were also rumors that Elizabeth engaged in sexual affairs with male servants, but there are specifics to it. Either the illicit activities didn't happen, or Elizabeth and her servants were very good at keeping things quiet. She was described as being very meticulous, so it wouldn't surprise me if she was having affairs and kept them under wraps. I mean, it was also not outside the realm of anything here that she and Ferenc had nothing to do with each other minus political means and siring heirs.
Yeah. Because it was an arranged marriage. It was like, or whatever.
That's quite literally the case. Hell, the oddballs here were actually Thomas and Orsolya Nadeshde. Brief side post here, everybody. Ferenc's parents and her in-laws. They actually loved each other, which was rare for a
psychopaths kind of do that?
I know, right? How could you love someone you're arranged to marry? But yeah, no, they actually loved each other, which is the strange part for the beginning of it all.
Yeah.
Now, Elizabeth and Ferenc would not have any children until 1585, 10 years into their marriage.
God.
This was mostly due to Ferenc being off to war so often with the Ottoman Habsburg Wars, which were very much still going on. Some think the two may have actually hated each other, but if they did, they were very good at keeping that behind closed doors. The couple would have 5 children in total, with 3 of them living to adulthood. Anna, Kata, and Paul. I told you there'd be several Annas.
Yeah.
But luckily this is only the second Anna. And there's a couple of Katas or Catharines or Catalines.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there right now. There's only one Elizabeth, thankfully.
Yeah, no kidding.
Interestingly, Elizabeth was a good mother, ensuring her children got the same education that she did when she was younger. By the way, I'm sending you a couple of pictures. The first one is Elizabeth Bathory, the portrait of her, and the other is her husband, Ferenc Nadeshde. Handsome man, if you can trust the portrait. What? What are you looking at? He's holding his phone up at me. Are you saying I look like Nadeshde?
A little bit, especially with that widow speak there, bud.
Shut up. Moving on. Around this time, though, there were strange goings-on. Now we're gonna get into some into the meat of
weird
things.
Shit.
Yeah, things about to get a little weird. A young servant girl was dead at Castle Sarvar. Her body was already in a lidded casket when the local priest Istvan Magyari arrived. He'll be of some importance here. If I throw a name out, they're going to be important, even for a little bit. Elizabeth had said that this was due to a cholera outbreak, and she didn't want to scare anyone. And cholera is no laughing matter.
No, it is not.
It's essentially massive, super-duper bad diarrhea, and your skin turns blue on your fingertips and stuff. It is bad.
The phrase "shit your brains out."
Oh yeah,
literal. Literal on that one.
Soon, a few more servant girls would be dead, which caused locals like Istvan Magyari to question the validity of the cholera claims. Elizabeth would also have certain areas of the castle closed off and under heavy guard, which led to more suspicion.
Oh boy.
Magyari had sent a letter of complaint about the strange goings-on, even threatening to excommunicate Elizabeth Bathory.
Jesus. That escalated quite quickly.
Yep. Ferenc Nadeshde would actually talk to Istvan Magyari, quelling any suspicions and concerns that people were having. And with Ferenc's influence, Elizabeth was kind of free from anything.
For the most part.
Violent behavior from nobles to servants was not uncommon at the time, though.
No.
I mean, it's like, well, she did. It's like, but so did other nobles.
Yeah.
In fact, there's one particular one where Elizabeth struck one unfortunate servant girl for accidentally brushing her hair the wrong way. I think it was like she tugged too hard or something, and she got massively slapped. Severe beating.
Fun.
Also, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a cholera outbreak, because this was late medieval / early modern Europe.
Yeah, where washing hands was
Water conditions
a suggestion.
Water conditions and hygiene were not the best, so it does check out, and it wouldn't surprise me if she had parts of the castle actually set aside for the cholera outbreaks to quarantine
she had a
them.
reasonable alibi.
So there's possibility here, but still, it's a little shady looking to some people.
Mm-hmm.
Allegedly, it also doesn't help that Ferenc would bring back stories of torture and war from his time away from the battlefield.
Yeah.
Which may have been used by Elizabeth on some servants. One such torture was to strip a servant girl naked, cover her in honey, and have her stand in the summer heat while being attacked by ants. When the girl would pass out, Ferenc would then show Elizabeth how to put pieces of oiled paper in between the girl's toes and light them on fire. These are alleged cases here, but some pretty damning stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit.
Ferenc also allegedly brought a particular gift home. A metal claw, which Elizabeth may have used in her tortures.
Great. That's awesome.
So not only now do we have essentially a torturous woman, we have somebody walking around with, Freddy Krueger's glove.
Jesus.
That's a Krueger glove. I was like, I couldn't find anything in particular. I looked up clawed gauntlets and stuff.
And it just kept showing up with Freddy Krueger.
Well, there's that, and it's like they're most looks like the ring wraith gauntlets. So she could fit it over her hand and slash and stab. Very, very grotesque.
Mm-hmm.
One particular torture that Elizabeth would do was she would put needles in the fingernails of victims. There it is. Before cutting the fingers off.
Nope, we're done. We're done. You're done. We're done.
There it is.
Nope, fuck you. Fuck you and the horse you rode in on.
I don't even own a horse. I had a guy get sewn into it.
Yeah, you have to get stitched into one.
Oh, God. Let's see. I did the thing again where I almost lost my place. Thankfully, no. Killing of servants was not uncommon either, and would also usually result in just a fine for the offending party to pay. So, what's one dead servant girl? It's just $100 golden fine. That's pretty much nowadays.
It's like...
It ain't far from today either.
No.
From 1601 to 1609, Elizabeth Bathory would have a close confidant in the form of Anna Darvolia. There's another Anna, but I'm going by Darvolia for her last name. Don't worry. Yeah. Darvolia had been working with a Nadashde family for some time before Elizabeth had arrived at Castle Sarvar. She would eventually be given a permanent residence in the castle. From what I could find, Darvolia was seen by many as an evil woman. Some even describe her as a wild beast in female form.
Okay.
It's said that she helped teach Elizabeth several different manners of torture, with Darvolia's favorite being repeated beatings until the person was dead. Sometimes up to 500 beatings.
No.
It is also alleged that Darvolia told Elizabeth that virgin peasant girls were the best targets, since they wouldn't be missed nearly as much. After 1602, any allegations of torture and murder began to slow down, just, go away. But now, Ferenc and Elizabeth were seen in a more suspicious light. On January 4th, 1604, Ferenc would die from an unknown illness. The illness started in 1601 and initially caused horrible pain in his legs. By 1603, he would be permanently disabled and in very poor health. This likely could have been from a war injury or, I mean, to me, just going off it sounds a little bit like polio. Because polio affects your mobility as well as, lungs and stuff, so you can be horribly indisposed for a while. But I mean, it could have been something different too. We don't know what it is. We don't know what the disease could have been. Before he died, Ferenc entrusted his wife's and children's safety to his friend, Georgi Turzo, and he will play a major part before too long.
Oh boy.
In 1609, Elizabeth opened an academy of etiquette called a gymnasium, which would serve as a finishing school for young high-born women. Say it now. Etiquette, how to behave in court.
How to curtsy correctly,
Yeah.
where to put the salad fork.
Pretty much. That's what this was. A gymnasium was also where women back in ancient Greek times would actually house together and, spend their days.
Yeah, sort of like a frat house, but, classy-ish.
Sorority, but
Yeah, sorority. That's the word.
but definitely for finishing school. It would be here where many of the damning allegations against Elizabeth Bathory would stem. I should mention any rumors or hearsay of torture had not met aristocratic ears by 1609. It was all peasants and servants talking. The lesser folks.
The commoners.
Yes. Who cares about the commoners?
Is that the commoners out there with a mob?
I don't want to hear them right now. She had also allegedly surrounded herself with a small group of servants who would become her accomplices. Janos Fiszko Jujarvi, Ilona Jonagi, Dorothea Chentes, and Katalin Benicheski. That last one I could say easily. All four of these accomplices had been working with the Countess and her family since she had first given birth. Fiszko was the only male in the group, brought into Elizabeth's services around 1593. He was young, likely late teens, maybe early 20s. No date of birth for him, unfortunately. Allegedly, he was disfigured, but uncertain. Could have been a big nose, could have been big ears, could have had a cleft lip. Again, we don't know. He was just apparently disfigured. He would also do any of Elizabeth's commands and biddings with glee. So, he's kind of like an Igor at this point. We got an Igor now in the group. It's like, yes, master.
You did that a little too well. I'm just going to say that.
Ilana Yo was the wet nurse to Elizabeth's children. She was a widow and the oldest of the accomplices, having served the Nadashte family for decades. Elizabeth may have kept her employed because she felt sorry for Ilona being an old widow. It is also alleged that Ilona Jo was the cruelest of the accomplices. I want to say Jo because it is Ilona Jo, but it's Ilona Jo, which is essentially Helena Jo.
Yeah.
Next was Dorothea Chentes, with Dorothy. She started living in Castelcetta in 1605. She claims she was tricked by Ilona Jo to become a member of this execution squad, under the false pretense that Dorothea was to serve Elizabeth's daughter, the last one who had not been married yet.
Yeah.
The final member was Katalin Benicheski. The only thing I could find with her was that she was residing in Castelcetta since 1600 and was a washerwoman.
Lovely.
So, cleaning Clarue.
Yeah.
The Gyneceum was not around for long before the noble families noticed that their daughters were either missing or they were not given permission to see them. One red flag coming right up.
Mm-hmm.
One bloody red flag, if you ask me. Some visiting noblemen and women described seeing their daughters, sisters, cousins, and nieces severely weakened and in great pain, whimpering and crying. Yet they didn't try and get the young girls out of the Gyneceum for some reason. I don't know why. Allegedly, the sounds of beatings and torture could be heard from the castle Cheta. One person even claimed that 7 girls died there, were buried in shallow graves in a little garden behind on the castle grounds, and then the remains were dug up by dogs who carried the limbs and other body parts around the yard.
Sounds fantastic.
We're getting morbid here, man. I
little.
said at the top of the show, I warned people.
It was gonna get greasy. It's gonna get greasy.
It's getting greasy, all right. Another story of torture included a girl being forced into icy water with her clothes on and not being permitted to remove them when she was back out of the water.
Damn.
Many locals also say they saw young girls with ankles shackled, all covered in bleeding wounds, bruises, and scratch marks. More allegations came out, this time from nobles, and this is where I needed my, I have my direct source right here, the infamous lady. This is from the book itself. The tortures included, but aren't limited to: washed with and made to roll on the floor in nettles, pins stuck into their lips and under the fingernails, needles jammed into their shoulders and arms, floggings on the breasts while held in chains, their hands, arms, and abdomens scorched with burning irons, chunks of skin wrenched from their backs with pliers, noses, lips, tongues, and fingers pierced with needles, mouths forced shut with clamps, flesh cut out of the buttocks and from between the shoulders, then cooked and served to them, flesh and private parts singed with candles, knives plunged into arms and feet, hands crushed and maimed, fingers cut off with scissors and shears, red-hot pokers shoved up... I don't want to say it, the lady bit. Shoved up vaginas. Bodies beaten to death with cudgels, lashings until flesh fell from the bones, and girls made to stand naked in the winter cold, doused with water, or submerged up to the neck in icy rivers. These were what nobles were beginning to claim. For her own innocence, Elizabeth claimed that... Oh, I'm not even kidding on this one. Elizabeth's gonna plead innocence on a lot of this stuff, dude.
Hey, Elizabeth, you did some pretty fucked up stuff.
In my innocence and defense, sir.
What the fuck, man?
Elizabeth claimed that one of the girls got jealous over jewelry and thus murdered the rest of the girls in the gymnasium before committing suicide. It's gymnasium, not gymnasium. Because it looks like gymnasium. It really does. But it's gymnasium.
And that's your defense?
Whatever the case, the news had reached the Hungarian crown.
That ain't good.
Nope. Remember Georgi Torzo? I mentioned him earlier.
Yep.
He was a Palatine of Hungary. Think of like a second in command under the king. Kind of like the hand of the king.
Yeah.
Because he was also in charge of like law and order and that sort of stuff. So while the king did his stuff, yeah. Georgi Torzo was not dumb. He had an excellent education, particularly in humanities and law. So he already knew what he was having to look for with these claims against Elizabeth.
Christ, though.
He also knew several languages: Hungarian, Latin, Greek, and Slovak. He was raised Lutheran, but he was also politically savvy enough to maintain a very good relationship with the Habsburgs, who are Catholic. It's like, you gotta make sure you're good with everybody. Mm-hmm. So he's a little bit like Lord Varys, I want to argue.
Yeah.
Like, keeps his ear to the ground.
Yeah, absolutely does.
He was also good friends with the Nadashtes, and was even said to be very close friends with Elizabeth Bathory. He had heard the allegations against Elizabeth and had written about this was actually letters here. He had written plans to send her to a convent.
Okay.
Instead of her like suffering execution or what have you. I think he actually tried to, help her out, so to speak. And I when I initially was learning all this, I was like, I almost was going to treat him as like a bad guy, like, oh, I think I've got her, I'm going to finally, get her. Now, In 1610, Turzo got to work setting up a case against Elizabeth because he had both the King of Hungary watching him and the Hungarian Parliament. So he kind of had a lot going against him.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if the Habsburgs were also keeping an eye on him, too. Again,
yeah, I wouldn't be shocked by that either.
The Habsburgs, like they're the big name that everybody fears. I can't think of a good pop culture analogy for them.
I would say he'd almost be the head of the Lannister family. Like
Possibly.
Like everyone was like,
well, I mean, I almost see the Bathory and the Nadashde as the Lannisters because they allegedly loaned money to the crown and stuff. So,
but just in terms of pure fear, like it'd be Tywin Lannister.
There we go. Yeah. Throughout 1610, Turzo had the chief notary and deputy notary investigate and interrogate almost 60 witnesses in total. There was only one issue with the interrogations, is that they were mostly from commoners who had not seen anything or they only heard rumors about the tortures going on.
Yep.
No, but none of them would be allowed into the castle in the first place. Elizabeth somehow learned of the proceedings against her and would try to set up her own case of innocence. She actually attended the court of another noble, claiming that their daughter did die of natural causes and not torture. But this didn't really help her out that much.
No.
Things were starting to go sideways for Elizabeth Bathory. She would also write up her last will and testament on September 3rd, 1610. With not much left to go on, Turzo decided to take things into his own hands and planned to catch Elizabeth in the act. December 29th, 1610. Turzo arrived at Castelcetta with a group of armed men and arrested Elizabeth Bathory and her 4 accomplices. Turzo claimed he had caught Elizabeth in the act of torturing a young girl, but, in reality, she was sitting down at supper. He actually wrote a letter to the King of Hungary and said, "Yeah, I caught her torturing somebody." I think it was him trying to be clever to maybe go easy on her or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something.
Medieval worlds are so weird with gender structure.
Yes, they are.
While some of the armed guards kept Elizabeth detained, the rest of the intruding party searched the castle. I should mention this is also at night, so she can't see who's coming in just yet. The torches haven't exactly lit up the faces of her intruders yet.
Yeah.
Turzo wrote that he found the corpse of a young girl who had been beaten to death. They then heard the sounds of screaming and opened a door to find the accomplices torturing another girl.
Oh, fun.
They also found more victims who were hidden away and awaiting their turn. Albeit, I don't think excitedly.
I wouldn't imagine so.
No. All of these claims were enough for King Matthias II, King of Hungary, to give Turzo the go-ahead to put Elizabeth and her accomplices on trial. The trials were a practical circus, and in a modern view, terrible. Here's why. For one, nearly 300 witnesses were called to the stand to testify against Elizabeth and her accomplices. This would take place over at least 2 separate days in January.
Jesus.
So, yeah, that was fun. All testimonies were through hearsay, and that there was no physical evidence presented at court. So there was no dead girls, there was no torture devices, none of this stuff that said, yeah, we found it. It just wasn't brought to court. This would make it difficult to say whether or not Elizabeth actually did any of the crimes that she may have committed.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do that when
there's no physical evidence.
Yeah.
One servant girl in particular, name of Susanna, made the claim that Elizabeth Bathory had killed nearly 650 victims. There were also
That's a fucking claim, Jesus.
There were also claims of a book of names that she had kept. Unfortunately, I think the book is embellishment and only came up later on.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Because from what I could find, she did not have a list of victims, and I don't think that it would have mattered.
No.
Here's another, bloody red flag. All 4 of her accomplices confessed under torture.
Mm-hmm.
Which included having their nails pulled out with red-hot tongs. I'm gonna just keep bringing the bad stuff up. This is body horror for you, man. I'm sorry. But also not sorry.
Dick.
As well as severe beatings. They all said that they had killed at least 50 to 60 young girls, but, under the tortures, the numbers were up to, about 300.
Of course.
Again, this is all testimony under torture, and in modern eyes, that's not how you do...
Yeah, that's not a legitimate confession.
Exactly. So the torturers were getting... The jurors were getting what they wanted, so to speak.
Yeah.
The judges. There we go. Ilona Jo, and Dorothea would be buried alive for their crimes before being dug back up and burned on a pyre.
Okay, that seems a little ridiculous.
Again, Hungary. The weird punishment laws they have, dude.
Yeah.
Janos Juvari would be executed as well, albeit not as horribly as the two of his accomplices. I couldn't find out, how he died. Probably beheading. Something
Most
quick.
likely.
Something quick and simple. Hanging, maybe. His dead body would join the pyre as well. The only one who did not die of the accomplices was Catalina Benecheski. She would be given a life sentence, mostly because she was seen as an observer to the crimes and was proven to be abused by the other accomplices. So she was definitely let off easier. The accomplices also threw Anna Darvolia. Remember her?
Mm-hmm.
They threw her under the bus as well. But the thing is, she was already dead. She died in 1609. So she was dead and she had a terrible reputation, saying that she was the primary influence on the accomplices and Elizabeth Bathory. I would, of course, again, take this with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Because confessed under torture, and also, she's dead. She has a bad reputation. She can't defend herself.
Mm-hmm.
The servants also claimed that it was Elizabeth Bathory who was to blame for the crimes, not them. Elizabeth would maintain her innocence, once again, and said she was actually afraid of her sadistic servants. And even more...
I don't think I believe that.
And even more, she was never held in court. She was never held on trial.
So how the fuck are you gonna...
To make up for all of this, from 1611 to 1614, she wound up remaining under house arrest in Castle Cheta. So for the last 3 years of her life,
Jesus.
Torzo had done all he could to have the King of Hungary agree to the house arrest, which, King Matthias reluctantly agreed. He wanted Elizabeth dead, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
In likelihood, there were reports that, she was in a bricked up room and everything, or bricked up part of the castle. Now, in all likelihood, she likely was able to freely roam the castle as she pleased, or at least, a section of it.
Yeah,
while she was
got to do whatever she wanted.
While she was under house arrest. Either way, she was still living a fairly lavish life.
Yeah.
And then on August 20th, 1614, Elizabeth mentioned to a guard that her hands had, they felt cold. He told her not to worry and to get some rest. The next day, August 21st, she was dead. That's that.
Yep.
Because she had not stood trial and had also signed her last will and testament, all of her assets, from the castles, land, and possessions, all went to her children. More specifically, her son Paul. He was 12 at the time, so when he became of age, in just a few years, he would have control of the estates. She was initially buried at the churchyard in Cheta, but the locals weren't too fond of such a bloodthirsty woman, who they called the infamous woman, being buried in holy ground. So her remains were dug up and sent back to the Bathory estate in 1617. But where she lies now, we don't know. She could be in a crypt somewhere. She could just be in another churchyard. Hell, probably even underneath a new overpass or something. I don't know. With how things have changed over there.
Oh, shit.
It's like when they found Richard III underneath the parking lot.
That was pretty funny, though.
And I think it's for the best we don't know where she's buried. Because I feel like that could easily be a place for people to go and want to commit horrible crimes as a...
In the name of,
yeah. I'm going to show you one more... I'm going to send you one more picture. This is the Castle Cheta, the ruins of it, at least. It's up on a hill, so it's got a good vantage point. But that's it.
That's a gorgeous fucking castle.
For what it's worth. It's now become a tourist attraction.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's very much...
But that's a fucking massive castle.
Oh, yeah.
Holy shit.
I would love to go visit that, I think.
Yeah.
But now a massive debate has been going on. Was Elizabeth really a sadistic monster, or was she the victim of a conspiracy?
Yeah.
Based on what all I can see here is that, yes, I do believe that she was a sadistic person who took her frustrations out on servants and peasants, mostly because that was the norm at the time, before she decided to move on to noble girls. Possibly, I'll get into it. Now, did she kill over 600 people? No. That number has gotten, inflated over the years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
60 is still sizable, a sizable number for one person.
Yeah.
And this still puts Elizabeth in the Guinness World Record as the most prolific female serial killer. This isn't even including her accomplices. But, why did she kill and torture? Possibly because of her own beliefs. She was a Calvinist. And Calvinists believed in predeterminism. Predetermined fate. You're either going to heaven or you're not.
And if you're royal, you think you're going to heaven regardless, so, live it up.
So, hell, you could be going to hell. It's like, it doesn't matter what you do. You could live a good, chaste life. You're still going to go to hell. You could live a completely horrible, sinful life. You can go to heaven. So, but of course, I don't think that this was the case. I don't think that's a good enough reason. This is a good scapegoat for some people.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, oh, she's a Calvinist. It's clearly that she just wanted to act up because she could. Like, nah. In all likelihood, it's possible it's just because of, how punishments were dished out back then. Any misbehaviors could be met with severe enough force on young girls, even resulting in their deaths. And keep in mind, there were all these very strict laws of punishment I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Or perhaps was she the victim of a conspiracy to get all of her money and land? Some think the Hungarian crown, or the Holy Roman Emperor, owed the Nadasdy estate some 18,000 gulden, which is roughly $60,000 in today's money. So, good chunk of change for some people. The problem is it is most likely not true on the grounds of lack of evidence. I say this because people actually would write complaints over this type of thing, being owed money or land disputes, whatever. There were written records all the time. Unless they were destroyed, I feel that there would still be a record of even that happening. Like, nobody's going to stay tight-lipped forever.
No. Not like that.
Was it possibly religious prejudice? Elizabeth Bathory was Calvinist, with, and also dealing with, the Catholic Church. Catholic Protestant tensions are always fun. I'd, again, possibly no. I think that, from looking into all this, truly, I think that she just... And she wasn't even insane either. She was very much all there. She was not psychotic. She had no lack of touch with lack of reality. She knew where she was. This is not insanity. This is very much probably psychopathy. Or even sociopathy. We won't really know the answers to these questions, though, given how secretive she was and how physical first-hand evidence has not been found about, all of this. Will we ever know the truth? Not likely in our lifetime. But there's something I mentioned at the top of the show that I haven't touched about at all. Did she bathe in blood? Where'd that come from? She never did. She never bathed in blood. In fact, that all stems nearly a century after her death. In 1729, a Jesuit priest named Laszlo Tarocci began writing about legends he had been told by local people in Cheta, specifically about a vampire woman who would bathe in the blood of virgins to retain her youth and immortality. This story he collected was also during a time when, vampire mania was sweeping across Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I would argue it's also in a time when more people were learning to read. So, people were beginning to pick up these stories. The story moved from Hungary to the rest of Europe, and by the mid-19th century, the vampire countess that Tarocci had found and Elizabeth Bathory became one and the same.
Yeah.
Also, different authors and writers would throw their own additions into the legend, such as, Elizabeth had blood splatter against her face when she was torturing a young girl, and when she felt how smooth her skin was. That was the moment she knew she needed more. The only, similarities, air quotes, is that with her tortures, Elizabeth's clothing would get covered in blood, and according to testimony from one of her accomplices, although again, grain of salt, under torture,
Yeah.
she had bit a few of her victims. Allegedly, Elizabeth would just throw the blood-soaked clothes off and want any blood on the stone floors, washed away. Far be it from wanting to, something as so precious as blood, why would you wash it away?
Yeah.
Also, rip my Google history, because I decided to, because I had to ask the question, how much blood would it take to fill up a tub? Also, FBI, this is for a podcast, don't at me.
Oh.
There were factors involved. For one thing, Elizabeth's victims, they were all young girls, between the ages of 10 and 14, so adolescents. The average adolescent has a little under 1 gallon of blood inside them. The average bathtub is roughly 60 gallons to 80 gallons. So, nearly 60 girls alone to be drained of blood in quick succession.
Yeah.
Because blood
Coagulates.
Blood
quickly.
coagulates. You have to be fast. So there's that little bit of morbid history. And finally, here's to the obvious. Elizabeth Bathory has absolutely made her way into pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
Albeit with things really digging in, most things really digging into the, the blood bathing and the vampirism aspects.
Yeah.
I actually, and you're going to enjoy this one, I recall the first time I learned about her. It was 2007. Cartoon Network had an animated Hellboy called Hellboy, Blood and Iron. It was an animated movie that took place before the 2004 movie, where Hellboy and Dr. Broom, both voiced by their respective actors Ron Perlman and John Hurt, have to deal with the cult of vampires who intend to reawaken their queen, who was inspired by Bathory, particularly with the blood bathing. She has also been the subject of, countless movies, books, fiction and nonfiction, songs such as Ghost Has a Song, the band you and I are familiar with, called Elizabeth, all pronounced Elizabeth in the lyrics, talking about her and the more dark side, the dark aspects that have permeated her legend and folklore. She has also appeared in video game franchises, specifically Castlevania.
Yes, I remember that one.
But that is it for Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess.
So she seemed like a well-adjusted person.
She was very well-adjusted. I mean, and what's even more is the numbers are going to be constantly disputed because we don't know.
Yeah, and it's so far back that you can almost just throw a number out.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, that's believable.
Just throw a dart at the board.
Yeah.
Everybody stops at 650. They think that's it. And I'm like, I don't think that she would have killed that much. It's the way that it was said is that a lot of the tortures happened at different castles too, not just Castle Cheta. And this is the servants saying that, but the servants, they all stayed mostly at Cheta. They didn't.
Yeah, they didn't travel.
If they followed around with her, that's talk about a good entourage.
Yeah.
But even then, and I actually do have a good idea for next week's episode. For the next episode.
Oh no.
I'm just gonna say, Tony, we're going down under. Going to Australia for a bit. Yeah.
Oh no.
And I'm not.
I don't like when you get suspicious.
And I'm not gonna tell you what it is.
You should probably tell me what it is.
Everybody, stay tuned next time. With that being said, once again, this has been Tall and Short with Tim and Tony. We hope you enjoyed this, and you've maybe been a little creeped out at some of the morbid details we had. I know
That's Tim's intent.
I know Tony was.
Yeah.
He was.
Fingernails. No.
Yeah, there were certain little details like that made me just go, ugh. Nope. I knew you would get it.
Yeah.
I also am happy that I brought to light one of the darkest figures in history.
Yeah.
I initially thought that she was a murderer, but then that she did all this, and I'm looking into it, I went, oh, she's
just
not nearly as bad as I thought.
Yeah. The bar is not as far up as it was.
As they say it was.
Yeah, she's not a great person, though.
No, she was not, by all means. But Logo by Brittanie Norris. You can also follow us on Tall and Short Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. You can also email us at tallandshortpod@gmail.com. All of this can be found in the show notes and the descriptions. Please leave us a like, comment, stars, tell your friends, tell everybody, whatever.
Tell your murderous queens if you want.
There's always that too. You gotta tell your murderous vampiric queens.
Yeah.
And everybody, hope you all have a good day, and don't bathe in blood after slaughtering 600 virgin girls.
Well, there goes my Thursday.